Fortune 500 companies trust Interoptic for optical transceivers and cables. Since 2004, Interoptic has provided high performance optics and cables at a fraction of the cost of OEM gear. Interoptic products are 100% tested and backed up by real engineers. Work with the optics experts at Interoptic. Find out more at interoptic.com/packetpushers.
Welcome to Heavy Networking, the flagship podcast from the Packet Pushers, now in our 15th year. If you've ever argued about the optimal MTU size to maximize tunnel throughput while avoiding fragmentation, you found your tribe. I am Ethan Banks, and with me is Drew Conray Murray, your hosts for today's episode. You can connect with us on LinkedIn or our community Slack group, and please do. On today's episode, we're chatting with wireless ISP engineer Elijah Zeida. Elijah had an interesting connectivity challenge to solve for a remote mountain town and not much budget to solve it with, but he got it done by building pretty much his own SD-WAN using Mikrotik boxes and ZeroTier software. This is the sort of solution you could build yourself. And there's more to the story, of course, and Elijah is going to tell us all about it. So, Elijah, welcome to the show. And hey, man, this is your first time on Packet Pushers on Heavy Networking. Would you introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Well, hey, Ethan, Drew, thanks for having me on. My name is, like I said, Elijah. I'm a network engineer at a wireless internet service provider called Airbridge Broadband in north central Idaho. We're pretty remote and rural. We're about an hour and a half to a Walmart. So that's what I do. I design the towers, and I started out doing installs, infrastructure, building the towers from the ground up. Past few years, I've been doing the engine on the engineering side of things.
Yeah, now Idaho, for those of you that aren't familiar with United States geography, that is northwest part of America. The northern tip would be on the Canadian border, and it's like you said, rural, mountainous. That really describes the whole state. Is that fair?
Yeah, and in fact, we're in one of the most rural parts of the state. There's one traffic light for the whole state. Rumor is it was put in for driving students, and the county goes all the way from the Oregon border all the way to the Montana border. So it's the largest county. I think it's the largest geography county in Idaho, and it's one of the least populated.
Wow. So, can you tell us a little bit more? Obviously, it's a small town, but how does this town connect to the rest of the world? And what are they relying on that connectivity for?
So previously, before Airbridge Broadband started, connectivity was mostly DSL, and there were a few other wireless internet service providers in the area that were providing maybe like 1 to 3 megabits per second. Airbridge Broadband came in and started offering anywhere between 10 to 50 megabits per second. Now we're offering anywhere between 100 to 300 by 300 megabits per second. Connectivity in this part of the state is a challenge because as of right now, there is one fiber line running into the area that's Lumen, and there have been times where a farmer with a backhoe hit that fiber line, and it took out 911. It took out
Oh,
us. It took
wow.
out Verizon. It took out everybody because we're 100% single threaded into the area. We are working on the state level, and there's some certain other projects that will bring redundancy into the area, but that's still we're probably still multiple of years out on that.
Does the Rural Broadband Initiative at the federal level help maybe with that?
It does. A lot of the projects that'll bring fiber redundancy into the area have already been funded through previous grants in previous years. BEAD funding that's coming down the pike is mostly meant for last mile to the home connectivity. So we do have a few projects that have been funded already, but as all that goes, it still takes multiple of years to, engineering studies, digging, actually get it in the ground, and then operational. It's going to be a long time.
Now, you said that you got one fiber going into the area. What is the use case for the fiber? What kind of traffic's going over that thing?
The majority of the traffic is mostly like Lumen is using it to connect their COs together. So Lumen uses that fiber to go from CO to CO. There are very few organizations that have actual fiber connectivity from Lumen's CO to whatever. So we obviously have fiber connectivity to a few locations that we then bounce wirelessly out. You might have a few other locations that have fiber, but for the most part, it's mostly just Lumen CO to CO.
And then your users, the people that are your customers, are these business, home, both?
Yep, we serve residential and business. It doesn't really matter. Same wireless plans for everybody. We don't make a difference between wireless or residential.
Okay.
And how do they access your service?
So they really just call us up and say, "Hey, we want better or faster internet." And then we say, "Sure." So we go out to their place, we see if they can see a tower. So we'll put a tower on a hill or some other location that can see a large amount of users.
Mhm.
We also prefer to do a lot of little towers instead of one monstrosity. So the majority of our towers are around 40-ish feet tall. We have one that's 80 and we have one that's 90, but the majority of them are around 40 feet, and we prefer to just do a lot of little ones versus one or two big ones. And so we'll just put a fixed wireless antenna on the building
Mhm.
and shoot it to the closest tower.
So in this area, you guys are rural, spread out, mountainous region. You're just trying to provide internet access for everybody for all the reasons that we all want internet access. And then winter comes. And what are the challenges?
Yeah, so the challenges are pretty good. We get a lot of snow, ice in this part of the country, and
Define a lot.
Yeah, you're talking to
um,
somebody in New Hampshire, so we need to level set here.
okay, yeah. So where I'm at here, I'm at around 2,200 feet, I believe. I can get up to a foot, maybe a bit more of snow in the winter. Grangeville, which is the town that Airbridge Broadband is headquartered, they can also get a little bit over a foot. And then we have a town called Elk City that's about an hour and a half from Grangeville. It takes about a 25-mile point-to-point link from Grangeville to a top of a mountain, and then another, I can't remember what it is. It's like another 7-ish miles from the top of that mountain down to Elk City. And they can get a couple feet of snow, and they're about an hour and a half away from Grangeville. And so,
So,
and
so,
the
so wait,
problem
the
with the
only way into that town is the point-to-point shots over the mountain ranges?
Yeah, and in fact, that's even how the incumbent gets their uh, their DSL and their cell phone service into that town. That's how the incumbent does it. They shoot a wireless link up to the top of that mountain and then back down as well. They're the only physical lines running to the town are power. There's no, the incumbent gets down into the town and then they run, copper around the town,
Mhm.
but it's all wireless into the town.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so a foot of snow, 2 feet of snow. You mean at a time or like through the whole season? That's about what you're going to get.
Usually through the whole season.
Okay.
Sometimes more, sometimes less, and it depends on the area, of course. But yeah, that's usually throughout the whole season.
Okay, you're not getting crushed by snow like some of the West Coast towns or Utah or Colorado can have many, many feet of snow. It's not that bad, but it's still a thing.
Yeah, it's still a thing, and it can get really cold here. So part of the what's really weird about this location too is we can get some really extremes. We can have negative 15-degree weather in the winter, and we can have 120-degree weather in the summer. And so the extremes in temperature, our equipment, we have to make sure our equipment can work with the extreme temperature differences, which is one of the reasons we chose Mikrotik as our main routing and solutions platform, is because their equipment can handle those extreme temperature differences.
Okay, so microtik boxes end up where are you using them? Like you were talking about wireless shot going from the top of a mountain down into the town. So you have microtik boxes on either end of that.
Yes. Yeah. So every tower gets a Mikrotik router, and most of the time a Mikrotik switch as well. So we're using it for routing and switching. So Mikrotik boxes at every tower location. Most of the wireless is Ubiquity. Even that 25-mile shot is a Ubiquity AirFiber 11 with
Mhm.
a 4-foot dish on each side.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Wow. And so you said obviously being able to handle extreme temperatures is one of the reasons you went with Microtik, but I'm sure any of the major brand name vendors would also be happy to sell you hardened gear. What else drew you to Microtik?
The cost, of course, the cost is a big thing with Mikrotik as well. It's a great value for value. for the money, and it works really well. The devices are hardened, that provides the feature set that we need, and they can push the amount of traffic that we need. And when configured correctly, they work really well. They're super stable. We've had Mikrotik routers and switches out there for years with over a year of uptime because we'll have battery backups at our tower sites,
Hmm.
and most of the time this stuff just gets rebooted, mostly due to a firmware update, every year or two.
Let's pause for a message from our sponsor, Interoptic. Interoptic is the optical transceiver and cable specialist that maximizes your IT savings while minimizing network failures. Interoptic provides high-performing optics at a fraction of the price of brand-name optics. The Interoptic experts can help you spec the best optical transceivers and cables for your network environment. Interoptic optical transceivers are 100% guaranteed to be operationally equivalent with Cisco, Juniper, Extreme, Arista, Brocade, Palo Alto, and many other switches and routers. Due to Interoptic's deep optical transceiver technical experience, they can ensure that all messages, alerts, alarms, and threshold data are equivalent to OEM brands. Interoptic deploys rigorous 100% testing on their devices before they're shipped. Interoptic optical transceivers are built to the exact same quality standards as the OEMs and typically come from the exact same manufacturing lines. That's why insurance companies, retailers, financial services, and federal and state government customers deploy optics and cables from Interoptic. You can purchase the same, if not better performing optical transceivers, tested and backed up by real engineers at a fraction of OEM costs. Find out more at interoptic.com/packetpushers. That's interoptic.com/packetpushers. And now back to the podcast.
Now, Elijah, when you chatted with us about this solution that you built, this because we haven't talked about the ZeroTier component yet. We're going to get there, but ZeroTier and Mikrotik has an integration, and you use that to help out Elk City, as I remember, right in the winter. This was the city that we're getting to via the wireless shot, and that's it, because the only hard lines going into the town are power, as you described. So paint the scenario for us where Elk City might go off the air, have some trouble because of the weather.
Yeah, so we have the 25-mile shot going from Grangeville to the top of this mountain, another 5, 7-ish miles down into town. Well, this mountain, the top of this mountain is also strictly and only powered by solar.
Oh, wow.
And the only way to get up to the top of the mountain, probably a good 6 to 7 months out of the year, is either snowmobiles or helicopter. And in fact, so we're renting space on a tower up there, and they have a generator up there, but almost every year the generator either runs out of propane. Last year the generator burnt up, went through all of its oil, and they had to helicopter in more oil to the top of the mountain to get the generator up and running. But when your solar panels have up there, it's probably 5 or 6 feet of snow up on top of this mountain. The panels just don't charge, and you have to run the generator, and the generator goes down, so does all of your equipment. And so the one link into this town goes out, and everybody loses their connectivity. And so, as you mentioned, we came up with a solution called ZeroTier, and ZeroTier is an SD-WAN VPN. They call it like a smart switch for planet Earth, is what they call it, and it's essentially a layer 2 uh, solution that we can put. Mikrotik has a native package for ZeroTier that you can install on these boxes, and it essentially makes it as if it's a physical interface on both of the boxes. It's end-to-end encrypted using cryptographic IDs, and I can make it look as if the two are connected with a physical interface. And so then I can have a Mikrotik box at our head end. We have a Mikrotik box in Elk City. And so then using something, we'll say Starlink for an example, I can have a Starlink dish at our main site. And when the main connectivity over this mountain goes offline, well, the ZeroTier will automatically reroute through the Starlink, and I can run OSPF, IBGP, whatever I want over this Starlink interface, and then which keeps the customers online until the tower gets back up. So it's a very effective solution. We use ZeroTier for a VPN type as well. So I have a ZeroTier app on my phone, my computer, and I can use it to VPN in our network so that I can be able to administer our network from really anywhere in the world. And what's great is it's kind of like IEEE 802.1x, I believe it is, where it has like port-based network access controls where
Mhm.
most VPNs, you kind of just give a person a username and password, and then who knows like who they could give that username and password out to. They could use that username and password on their phone, their computer, their friend, who knows, right? Zero tier is great because each device has its own authentication.
Mm.
And so I can give somebody the network ID and they can put it on their phone. But if they went to take that network ID and join on their computer, it wouldn't work because I haven't authorized that device. And so, but anyway, so that's a quick introduction on that. And it's works really well. And in fact, just really quick, we had the similar incident the other day where we had a wildfire threaten a tower side of ours and took the tower offline because the power company shut all the power down. And similar situation, we set up a Starlink and got ZeroTier up and running, and we were able to provide internet to the town for the short while the power company got the power back online.
Mm. Now, ZeroTier, just to put, it's basically it's an overlay. It's a tunneling solution, and it tunnels Ethernet frames in their entirety. Is that right?
That's correct. It is a layer 2 tunnel. And so what's great about that is being a layer 2 tunnel, like Mikrotik has what they call an MDP packet, Mikrotik Discovery Protocol, which is very similar to CDP and all those other discovery protocols. And so
Mhm.
because it's a pure layer 2 tunnel, and it uses UDP and it can punch through just about anything, DNS, double, triple NAT. What's great about it is if you can open up your UDP ports, and if you aren't doing like multiple NAT, then it will do a point-to-point connectivity. So it'll like connect itself using they call them planets and moons. So like their servers, the two endpoints will connect through their servers. But if you can open up your UDP ports, they will provide direct point-to-point connectivity, and it
Ah,
won't even go through their servers at all.
I see what you're saying. So,
Um,
so there's two different architectures then with ZeroTier. You can hit one of their planets. It sounds like a hub that acts as a relay to connect your
mhm.
two endpoints. Or, like, as you're saying, if you've got UDP connectivity available end to end, then you're standing up a point-to-point tunnel direct without having to go through any of the ZeroTier. I'll call it the cloud architecture.
Exactly. And you can even spin up your own cloud architecture if you want. You don't have to use theirs. But like I said, it's still all end-to-end encrypted using unique cryptographic IDs and everything. So I just let them handle the cloud infrastructure.
Okay. Now, Mikrotik is inexpensive gear, as you said. We've had some other wireless ISP guys come on and talk about Mikrotik before, and that was another thing that they cited for sure, as you did. Cost. You can get a lot of functionality, a lot of bang for the buck with Mikrotik. How does ZeroTier fit into that? Because as if I remember, back in the day, it was open source with a commercial variant, something like that.
Yeah, so the way ZeroTier integrates with it is Mikrotik came out with a native ZeroTier package. So I can install ZeroTier directly on the Mikrotik box. Now ZeroTier does have, they have iOS, Android apps, Windows apps, Linux apps, Mac. You can run it on Synology and Docker, BSD. I mean, it's very versatile. I know a guy who's running it like on a Proxmox
Hmm.
box, because ZeroTier runs on Linux natively too. So he has some like Ubiquity edge routers, and he'll go into the CLI into the Ubiquity edge router because it's just Debian, in the background, and he'll run the ZeroTier Linux script CLI of his edge router, and he'll get ZeroTier up and running on his Ubiquity edge router.
Mm.
Um, and so it's very versatile. If you can get to the CLI, I mean, I think he even talked about getting it running on like an Arista switch if you can get down into the CLI. And so, Proxmox, you get ZeroTier working on a Proxmox device, and you now have a ZeroTier connectivity between Proxmox and whatever else. It just shows up as a physical interface, and you can literally run whatever you want on top of it. OSPF, IBGP, MPLS, VPLS, whatever you like.
So I want to make sure I understand how this is working. If there's a tower that's providing service to Elk City and the tower power goes out for whatever reason, out of generator, snow, whatever, fire, how is ZeroTier helping? Because if there's no power, what is ZeroTier doing? Or how are you overcoming the power issue?
So we go from the top of the mountain to one tower down into the town, and then from that one tower in the town, we go to about 4 or 5 other towers. And so all 4 or 5 other towers in town go to one tower. That one tower goes to the top of the mountain. The one tower that's the kind of, we'll say it's the hub down in Elk City, is a Starlink dish. And that Starlink dish goes to a Mikrotik router, which has NAT on it that provides, so that's how I can get internet to that Mikrotik box through that Starlink. Well, I put a ZeroTier package, which then doesn't ZeroTier interface, and using ZeroTier IDs and everything, you kind of connect it to uh, another Mikrotik box on another part of our network. Well, I just put, like, we'll say OSPF on those ZeroTier interfaces. Well, now the Mikrotik box in Elk City on that tower is connecting to another Mikrotik box on another part of our network using OSPF over ZeroTier over Starlink. And because of, like, we'll say OSPF, right, has a cost associated to it, so a higher cost value, the traffic, the traffic won't go over that. So the OSPF cost on that link is really, really high.
Mhm.
So traffic will preferentially prefer the main link going over the tower and over the mountain. Well, then if that ever goes down, OSPF will reroute the traffic. Actually, it's just the management traffic. Really, the customer traffic is natted through the Starlink itself, and it's just management traffic that will go over OSPF, over the Starlink, and over, so we can still maintain management access to all of our devices for the day or so that power's out.
So rather than bouncing it up across the mountain via the tower, you're bouncing it up to low Earth orbiting satellite and back down because you got two Starlink base stations, one close by and one up in Elk City.
Well, yeah, the one that's close by, actually, we don't have one close by. The Mikrotik box is just mostly at our head end, and so it's just fiber connectivity. There's no Starlink there. The Starlink is
Oh,
only
okay.
on the Elk City side.
Yeah, at some point it gets into the Starlink network though, and and then gets beamed down to them. So they're just another. It just so happens the last mile is Starlink for Elk City in that case. That's their backup.
Yep, for the day or two that power goes out, we'll have Starlink there, and it works really well. So I think we have, like, the business package, there that we pay, and for the it only works for a day or two out of the year. It just kind of sits there pretty much for the rest of the months.
Uh-huh.
But for the day or two of the year that we need it, it works really well.
Yeah, do you feel like at some point you could use that as an additional link to provide more traffic, like as opposed to just a backup or an emergency option?
Maybe we'd have to look. I think it's best to mostly only use it as a backup or emergency solution. It's best to probably use our own infrastructure and have the traffic over our own devices primarily.
Mhm.
And so we'll probably just keep it as a backup solution.
Okay. And just so I'm understanding the architecture, the Starlink dish is not on the tower that has the energy problems. It's in the town.
No,
Okay.
no, this Starlink is on a tower that's actually in the town. It's
Got it.
kind of like the main tower hub in town.
Okay.
And then from there, it goes like 7 miles up to the top of the mountain. And then from the top of the mountain is where the energy issues are, because then you have another 25-mile shot
Mhm.
down to Grangeville.
Okay. And as you said, you're able to use OSPF to set this up so that it's not an always on path. It only comes on as needed.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
Latency. It feels like both of these solutions could have some significant latency, whether you're going over the mountain with the two different wireless shots or whether you're using Starlink. How is that experience?
Latency is great when using our infrastructure. Actually, that's probably maybe a 1 to 2 millisecond shot, the 25-mile shot. It's really not that bad. The 7-mile shot is going to be under a millisecond. And so when using our own infrastructure, latency is great. And when using the ZeroTier and Starlink solution, it's one of the reasons I opted to actually, so the Mikrotik box that has the Mikrotik box that has the Starlink attached to it actually has some NAT rules that will NAT customer IP traffic through the Starlink. And so it's one of the reasons I opted to do that, and then only have management access go over OSPF is to help with latency, because otherwise customer traffic is going to flow over OSPF Starlink and then have to route all the way back into our network and then route all the way back out, versus just NAT through the Starlink dish, and then management access going to be a bit slower and have latency. But I'll deal with that for the day or two,
Hmm.
and so that's how I dealt with the latency problem.
Just minimizing the amount of traffic that. Oh, well, okay. So in that scenario, what you're saying is the Elk City, our population here, they're going to get their internet access via Starlink direct, not natted. But if it's coming back to you as the provider, it's again, all you're really concerned about is the management traffic and keeping the boxes up and monitored and so on.
Exactly. Yep. Just so I can monitor all the boxes. If I have to log into a switch, access point, like troubleshoot customer issues. All of our tech teams can still have access to
Yeah.
all of the devices.
So what you don't have in this solution is like application-based routing. Like if this is a full-blown SD-WAN solution, that would be one of the things. Oh, I want to send web traffic over Starlink because it's fine, but anything that's more latency sensitive, I'm going to push it this other direction over the
You
tower. Like if both solutions were up, I'm just trying to think through like how could you have both solutions up and working? And would you want
you
that?
could if you wanted. You could if you wanted. ZeroTier has a lot of like policy based firewall type rules and things like that, and then Mikrotik, of course, has a lot of, they call them like Mangle rules and Layer 7 application firewall rules. You could do just about anything you wanted. Your imagination is probably the limit to what you can do with ZeroTier and Mikrotik.
Hmm.
But for me, it's a little bit simpler. Well, I consider it a little bit simpler. I would just rather want all traffic to go over the mountain when it's up. If it's down, I want customer traffic to go over the Starlink, and then management access to go over ZeroTier OSPF, and that.
As soon as you start introducing some kind of a manual policy-based routing where you're picking this source and that source to go through this line or that line, and then you got to troubleshoot it because reasons, yeah, no, you don't want to do that if you don't have to. There's not a really good, compelling reason to do that. You'd need something. You'd need again like a full-blown SD-WAN solution where you could build that policy at a higher level and keep everybody sane if something's going wrong, trying to troubleshoot it. No, okay. So you ZeroTier can install as a package on Mikrotik. Does that mean it sounds like it's a Mikrotik supported solution. They support this thing natively?
Yeah, they build the package. You just literally drag and drop it over to the router. You reboot the router, and you now have a ZeroTier native package on Mikrotik. So yes, they support it. And that's one of the reasons Mikrotik. I love Mikrotik, and it's not for everybody. But it's the right tool for us. The one thing that Mikrotik doesn't have is a phone number that I can call and say, "Hey, I need something," right?
Uh-huh.
But that's one of the reasons they're able to keep their costs low. Call center support costs a lot, and they're able to keep a lot of their costs low by not having that. So you have forums and you have Discord, and you have the knowledge base and everything. So if you know how to use it, it's really, really powerful. You can get a lot done with it. And yeah, they just have a native package that I install, and it works great.
So do you have to pay licensing cost to ZeroTier for your use case?
ZeroTier, they changed their licensing or pricing structure up recently, so I'm not 100% familiar with it as I used to be. But before, you had to pay like $5 a month if you wanted to have multiple different administrators or something like that. And like I said, they changed their pricing up recently, but it's really price effective. I think we pay, gosh, like $15 a month, and that handles all, our zero tier through. So we have our a backup network. We have our VPN network. I also use zero tier. So I have So Airbridge Broadband has 3 separate offices. One in Kamiah, Lewiston, and Grangeville, and each office has a Mikrotik router for the main router. And I have a zero tier package on each office, and zero tier, I have connected all of the offices together. So I can print on a printer in Lewiston. If I'm in Grangeville, I can access the internal network. All 3 offices are connected through zero tier.
What about support for ZeroTier? Do they also similar situation, or?
Yeah, they have their documentation. They have a great API community, and things like that. Honestly, I've never really needed to have a reason to like try to reach out to them. Everything is just super simple. You basically log in, hit the create a network button. They give you a network ID. You have the app on your phone, your computer, Mikrotik, or whatever. You copy and paste in that network ID. You log into the website. You hit the authorize button to authorize the device, and you're kind of off to the races.
You,
Um,
go ahead.
so they also have the one thing that was a little bit trickier to figure out, but even that wasn't that bad. They have what are called managed routes, and it can act as like even a DHCP server. So like the VPN solution that we have, you go in there and you tell it, hey, I want you to be able to access. We'll take the 172 range, right? The private IP range of 172. So 172.16.00/12. I want to be able to access that, and you route any of that traffic through a specific IP. So like we have our call it a VPN router. So on that VPN router has a specific IP address, and then I say I want to be able to route 172.16.00/12 through this IP. And so then on my phone, computer, whatever, I type in 172.16 whatever, 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 then it knows to route that traffic specifically through zero tier through that other IP. And then obviously the routers know that they can access that 172 range through that IP address.
Now you mentioned ZeroTier is essentially doing layer 2 encapsulation, so it's tunneling. Do you ever run into concerns with tunneling? Does it affect performance ever? Does it cause troubleshooting headaches? Does it cause routing headaches?
Nope, never had any problems with it because it's a layer 2 tunnel. And so if I remember right, they're doing like jumbo frames. You can do just about anything you want with it, and you never have a problem. You can just put anything you want for it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about was fragmentation. Do you have to deal with MTU and MSS sizes on interfaces, anything like that, to make sure that you're going to be able to get that zero tier frame or packet through unfragmented?
I've never had to deal with fragmentation issues. I've done this VPN thing, traffic and a bunch of stuff with it. I've never had to deal with fragmentation issues, but I mean, it just depends on what you're doing.
So, Elijah, you've talked a lot about zero tier and all the cool stuff that you can do with it. If I'm a network engineer and I've not worked with zero tier before, do you have any tips or other things I should be looking at or considering as a network engineer to make my zero tier deployment smooth?
So, being as it's so simple to get up and running, there's actually not a whole lot. You basically just need to go to zerotier.com, create an account. You can log in, create a network. And then I think the biggest thing is just making sure your managed routes are set up correctly and your users are set up correctly. And you can run to their documentation. They've got great documentation, and then documentation for whatever platform you're using, like say Mikrotik. Mikrotik has a great zero tier page, and you can. It's super like on Mikrotik. It's super easy to install. It's just any other package. If you're used to Mikrotik, you just drag and drop the package into the folder location, reboot the router, and it automatically installs the package. And you basically take that zero tier ID, put it into the router, and it'll connect to your zero tier network, and you just make sure your managed routes are set up correctly, and it's pretty flawless.
Okay, so zero tier ID. So is that my endpoint identifier, or is that like the network that I'm participating in?
That's like the network that you're participating in. And
Okay.
so you have a Mikrotik on one end and a Mikrotik on another. You're going to take that network ID and you're going to put it into both of them. And so then it tells both those Mikrotiks that they are participating in the same, we'll call it network, in the same network. And, I have like, again, I've like our Grangeville office, Cami office, and Lewiston office. They're all participating in the same network, so to speak. Like I go to the neighbors, so like in Cisco world, you can view the Cisco neighbors. If I go to the neighbors in my Mikrotik, I see all the offices from one device. And
Hmm.
so, or like our VPN solution that we have. So everybody that I have given access to the VPN, I give the same network ID out to all of them. But each device is authorized on a per device basis.
Got it. Okay. So that means I could, if I wanted to run more than one zero tier environment, more than one zero tier network on my network, I could have just different IDs and they would be unique from one another.
Exactly. Yeah, you just go into your ZeroTier account and you just click on the create a network button and
Yeah.
pops another network and a different ID, and you can do whatever you want. And then like our VPN solution, I have it set up as like a DHCP server as well. So when a device connects to the ZeroTier network, ZeroTier will hand out an IP address to that device, and with that IP address, that IP is going to be authorized um, to log into the rest of the network.
So could you use that capability to, either do some kind of micro-segmentation or set up different kinds of service tiers that you could then offer to customers, like as here's our highest service tier, slightly lower, et cetera?
You probably couldn't do that, but what you could do, you could offer maybe different services to the customer.
Uh-huh.
So like if you put, you could like you could almost replace like an MPLS tunnel
Mhm.
with a ZeroTier tunnel, right? Because then the ZeroTier tunnel will punch through anything. It can create a point-to-point connectivity. And so all you would need is like a ZeroTier interface on the customer side of things and a ZeroTier interface somewhere else. And you could immediately create a point-to-point connectivity. And so you could almost see it almost like as an MPLS type of tunnel to run a different kind of service.
Mhm.
So you could have internet going off one direction, and then let's say you wanted to offer, full BGP tables, phone, or something, a different service.
Yeah.
You could route that through the ZeroTier portal itself.
Okay. So there is some differentiation you could set up.
Yeah. Yep. And they have, a lot of like flow rules and stuff like that I haven't messed with. But again, they have great documentation, and they do support IPv6.
I think, yeah, I
So
was going to ask.
yeah. And so you can have, you can set up your network to be private, public, single sign on, whatever you'd like. And they do bridging and kind of whatever you need. And so that's one of the reasons, Mikrotik is extremely cost effective. The price to performance is amazing. We've never had any issues running Mikrotik, and with a zero tier on top of it, the um, your imagination is pretty much the limit on what you can do.
Something you mentioned along the way is that zero tier is end-to-end encrypted. So does that mean I have to deal with certificate management, that kind of thing?
Nope, they handle all that. You don't have to deal with any of that.
Well, gotta be something. A pre-shared keys, gotta be something I gotta manage. Yeah? No?
Nope, nothing. All you need to do is install the on Mikrotik, and even Windows or anything like that. All you have to do is download it, install it, connect to the network, and that's it. They've made it super simple
Hmm.
and kind of bulletproof. If hold on a second, guys, actually let me log into my router really quick, and let me actually see. Let me actually look at the certificate side of things. like if I can see that. Okay, yeah, here I can see. So if I go to in my Mikrotik router, I can look at the ZeroTier instance. It has an identity and it has a public identity, and so it's probably just automatically generate. So that's almost like your certificate, like your private and
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
certificate, and
Yeah.
it's generating that automatically is what it is.
Hmm. But again, you don't have to deal with that, Elijah. You're not managing certificates or pre-shared keys or any of those things. Zero Tier is just dealing with that for you.
Yeah, it has, when you install the package, it has an identity and a public identity, and it handles all of it. It generates all those values automatically. In my Mikrotik router, I just go to ZeroTier, I hit the plus button, and I name it whatever I want. I tell it the network ID, and it does what it wants. You have to specifically tell it to route global IP addresses or public IP addresses. By default, it will not route public IPs. So if you want to route public IPs, you got to watch out for that a little bit. But yeah.
Now, if we think of this solution that you've built here, we could describe it as basic SD-WAN, or maybe DMVPN is a better analogy to what you've built. What would you say the trade-offs are with what you've got versus some fancy full-blown SD-WAN solution from a name brand vendor?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't have a whole lot of experience with some of the name brand vendors, and so I don't know exact some of the things you can get with those guys. I'm sure they're great, and I'm sure they have a specific use case. And if they have a feature that you absolutely need, again, the right tool for the job. But for us, the zero-tier SD-WAN solution for VPN, or again the SD-WAN solution for like a backup or whatever you need, it works really well, and it's simple and it's easy and
Hmm.
it's affordable and it works good. And so again, I think it's really your imagination is the limit on what you can do with it.
Well, I also think it's tied to your specific use case, in that you're an ISP where the thing that you need more than anything else is connectivity. I mean, I know with some full-blown SD-WAN, so I mean, SD-WAN's kind of become a subset of SASE. I mean, it's really a different use case. It's an enterprise and they have security needs and they want on-demand routing and they want active links maybe, and maybe they want policy-based routing that or let's call it app-based routing, where link by link they can, depending on the characteristics of the link at any given time, they can pump an application across one link or the other depending on the real-time conditions of what that link is. So that's a different animal. That's not what you're delivering. That's not what you're exactly doing here. You're like, let's keep Elk City online. How do we do that, in a transparent way that works for them and is simple for us to maintain and doesn't cost a fortune? That's a different answer. So yeah, I think I really think it goes back to what you were just saying. It's like it's a use case thing. Yeah, there's probably some features there that if you need them, you need them. We don't, and so there you go.
Pretty much. If you need, you could do, with between Mikrotik and ZeroTier, you could do that application-based routing. You could do layer 7 firewall rules. Mikrotik
Yeah,
has what
yeah,
they're
that's
called
true. Yeah.
Mango rules. You could do all that. ZeroTier has the flow controls, but like you said, I don't need them. I haven't used them. But if you needed to, you could, and you could do all that kind of stuff with it. But I've never needed it.
Elijah, just I'm curious, thinking bigger as a wireless internet service provider, what your take is on satellite broadband in general. Do you see, obviously you're using it, as a backup when your service, because of issues, can't get there, but do you see this as a competitor down the line at some point?
See all the tools in the toolbox as being valuable. So I think fiber has its place. I think fixed wireless has its place, and I think satellite has its place.
Mhm.
I don't think satellite will ever compete with fiber, and I don't really ever see it competing with a good fixed wireless solution. So I see satellite being great to hit some of the places that even we can't hit. There's some places out here that are just in the middle of nowhere and they need connectivity. And Starlink and all the other slower satellite solutions are a perfect solution, what they need, and honestly, probably about what they're only going to get
Mm.
in some of these places. Um, but our fixed wireless solutions, there's some new 60 gigahertz stuff coming out, and we can offer some of these 100 by 100, 200 by 200, 300 by 300, even some gig speeds over wireless these days. And so I think with a good fixed wireless solution, you're going to kind of have a tiered model where fiber is in our area. You're going to have fiber, which is really great, maybe in town,
Mhm.
fiber to the home. You're going to have fixed wireless, going to be in this intermediate between the town and the mountain, and some harder to get to places, but still pretty good. And then satellite be great farther out. So I see all the technologies somehow merging together. I don't think one is per se going to kill any of the others,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how I view things.
Okay, that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was imagining with Starlink. It's been interesting to watch Starlink's progress. They keep putting more birds up in the sky, but then as more people get onto the system, it does seem to be affecting overall throughput. The technology is incredible, but as
Exactly.
replacing what you're delivering, no, I don't see it for that. It does feel
Yeah.
like it's. I know. I mean, Starlink does have that package for ISPs where it's a whole different kind of a base station arrangement and so on, but they want you to fund building it. It's like I think it's 10 million just to get in the door, something like that, with
Wow.
what that
Yeah.
that is. But it's delivering a huge amount of bandwidth, and an uplink to the satellite constellation. So there is a model for that. But again, making the ROI work, that's a tough one because it's a significant infrastructure investment to get that Starlink huge ISP style base station up and off the ground. Well, Elijah, great
Exactly.
conversation, man. Great conversation. How do people contact you if they have questions about what you built? Maybe they want to get into ZeroTier. They want to go, Elijah, I can't figure this out. Help me out, man.
Yeah, if anybody wants to get into ZeroTier, Mikrotik, Ubiquity, whatever, I'd love to help out. You can contact me on LinkedIn. You can search for me, Elijah Zeida. You can send me an email, elijah@airbridgebroadband.com. I'm typically not on the Twitters or the X's, what it's called these days. I'm not really there much, but I'm on LinkedIn, or if you can send me an email.
Elijah, thanks for reaching out to us to tell this story. This was fun. Solutions like this are great, and because of where I live in rural New Hampshire, I love rural areas, and figuring out how to get them connected is a puzzlement. It's funny how mountains of all things really complicate life. They really make it difficult. This is just infrastructure doesn't go up there unless it's a tower, and even then it can be tenuous. So I love what you're doing, and I want to say thanks for your service almost. It's almost like you're in there in deep, helping out people who need help. So,
Well,
well, if
well,
yours,
we are changing people's lives. I will say, we've seen in this area a ton of people move in, being able to work from home.
Mhm.
5, 6 years ago, you couldn't work from home in this area, and people can do that these days. So I do feel a little bit like we're changing lives.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's cool. Well, all right. If you're still out there listening, thank you very much for listening to Heavy Networking today, part of the Packet Pushers podcast network. Of course, find out all about Packet Pushers at packetpushers.net. And while you're there, we would appreciate it if you'd sign up for our weekly newsletter, Human Infrastructure. Drew and I, and sometimes guest writers, serve up the very best networking and IT engineering content that we find on the internet and share it with you. I was working on this week's issue just before we recorded this with Elijah. By the way, it's not just links in there, but it's also our own summaries and takes on the posts that we're reading. And we also throw in nerdy memes of the week that cracked us up and highlight vendor news that we think you'll be interested in. And of course, your contact info is safe with us. We never ever share your addresses with anyone, even when they ask. And they do ask. There is a lot of things going on at Packet Pushers these days. We've launched 2 new podcasts pretty recently: Technically Leadership with host Laura Santamaria, all about how to transition into management, be an effective technical leader, and related topics. And then Total Network Operations with host Scott Rabon is focused on effective NetOps, because NetOps is not just working through ticket after ticket in your bucket. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.